A sentence fragment is not a sentence because it is missing an independent clause. In other words, a sentence fragment is missing a subject and/or a verb and/or a complete thought. This video will highlight common types of fragments and teach writers how to turn fragments into complete sentences. One common type of fragment is a dependent clause. A dependent clause begins with a subordinating conjunction such as because, when, if, although, and until. The sentence joining chart found at www.grammargrounds.com provides a list of all subordinating conjunctions as well as instruction for using them. A dependent clause contains a subject and a verb. However, the subordinating conjunction makes a dependent clause an incomplete thought. Because the roads were slippery. When Lang finishes his homework. If we hurry. Although they played their best game of the season. When the Rodriguez family goes on vacation. These are all fragments because they are not complete thoughts. Every sentence needs an independent clause. To turn these fragments into sentences, we can turn these dependent clauses into independent clauses. Because the roads were slippery is a fragment because it is not a complete thought. The roads were slippery is a complete sentence because it is a complete thought. When Lang finishes his homework is a fragment because it is not a complete thought. Lang will finish his homework is a complete sentence because it is a complete thought. Another way to turn these dependent clause fragments into complete sentences is to combine them with independent clauses to create complex sentences. If we hurry is a fragment because it is a dependent clause only. If we hurry, we will make it to the movie on time is a complete sentence because it is a dependent clause and an independent clause together. Likewise, we will make it to the movie on time if we hurry is a complete sentence for the same reason. When the Rodriguez family goes on vacation is a fragment. When the Rodriguez family goes on vacation, Tabitha will feed and walk their dogs is a complete sentence. Although they played their best game of the season is a fragment. Although they played their best game of the season, the Wildcats lost in overtime is a complete sentence. Once again, every complete sentence needs an independent clause. Therefore, a phrase alone is a fragment. A lone prepositional phrase is a fragment. Along the coast. In perfect harmony. With a booming voice. From Kenya. A prepositional phrase must be attached to an independent clause. A prepositional phrase that describes the verb of an independent clause can come before the independent clause or after the verb. Along the coast, the dolphins swam. The dolphins swam along the coast. In perfect harmony, the choir sang. The choir sang in perfect harmony. With a booming voice, the teacher addressed the audience. An adverbial prepositional phrase that is surrounded by commas can come before the verb. The teacher, with a booming voice, addressed the audience. A prepositional phrase can also describe a noun. A prepositional phrase that describes a noun should come right after the noun it describes. Compare these two sentences. In the first sentence, the prepositional phrase that is surrounded by commas explains how the teacher addressed the audience. In the second sentence, the prepositional phrase identifies which teacher addressed the audience. Even though these two sentences have the same words in the same order, they have slightly different meanings. My friend from Kenya bought a new car. Compare this sentence to the following sentence that has a very different meaning. My friend bought a new car from Kenya. An adjectival prepositional phrase will describe the noun that comes directly before it. A lone infinitive phrase is a fragment. To apply for the job. To pay for college. To get in shape. An infinitive phrase must be attached to an independent clause or be part of an independent clause. To apply for the job, Julie will send a letter of interest. Here, the infinitive phrase is an adverb because it explains why Julie will send a letter of interest. To apply for the job is Julie's plan. Here, the infinitive phrase is part of the independent clause because it is the subject of the sentence. Julie's plan is to apply for the job. Here, the infinitive phrase is part of the independent clause because it is the predicate nominative. Julie plans to apply for the job. Here, the infinitive phrase is the direct object of the independent clause. To pay for college, Jermaine works part-time. Diane hopes to get in shape. A lone present participial phrase is a fragment. Driving to work. Recovering from the flu. Playing video games all night. A present participial phrase must be attached to an independent clause. Driving to work, my sister got a flat tire. Recovering from the flu, Fong watched movies and read a book. Playing video games all night, Tiffany forgot to do her homework. These same phrases can also be gerunds, which function as subjects or objects of an independent clause. Driving to work takes 20 minutes. Recovering from the flu is no fun. She enjoys playing video games all night. These same phrases can also be part of a verb phrase in a continuous tense. She was driving to work. He is recovering from the flu. She will be playing video games all night. Notice in these three sentences, the only sentence that requires a comma is the sentence that begins with the present participial phrase. Playing video games all night, comma, Tiffany forgot to do her homework. A lone past participial phrase is a fragment. Confused by the assignment. Released in 1982. Destroyed by a hurricane. A past participial phrase must be attached to an independent clause. Confused by the assignment, Becky approached her professor. Released in 1982, Thriller became one of the best-selling albums of all time. Destroyed by a hurricane, the house was abandoned. A past participle can follow a be verb to create a sentence in passive voice. Becky was confused by the assignment. Thriller was released in 1982. The house was destroyed by a hurricane. Notice in these two sentences that the only sentence that requires a comma is the sentence that begins with a past participial phrase. Destroyed by a hurricane, comma, the house was abandoned. Finally, afterthoughts that begin with for example and such as are common sentence fragments. For example, going to the grocery store and finding time to exercise. Such as going to the grocery store and finding time to exercise. These are both sentence fragments because neither contains an independent clause. For example is a prepositional phrase used as a transitional expression. As this video has discussed, it is fine to begin a sentence with a prepositional phrase, but an independent clause must follow. Having children brings many challenges to new parents. For example, going to the grocery store and finding time to exercise is difficult with small children. Here, we begin with a sentence that makes a claim. Having children brings many challenges to new parents. The prepositional phrase, for example, transitions from the claim to specific examples. The examples are presented in an independent clause. Therefore, the second sentence is a complete sentence. For example, going to the grocery store and finding time to exercise is difficult with small children. A similar meaning can be created with the phrase such as. Having children brings many challenges to new parents, such as going to the grocery store and finding time to exercise. Unlike the phrase for example, the phrase such as will never begin a sentence. Also, a comma will never come directly after the words such as. A comma will come before the words such as if the entire phrase is not essential to the meaning of the sentence. However, if the phrase is essential to the meaning of the sentence, no comma is necessary. Compare this sentence to the following sentence. Challenges such as going to the grocery store and finding time to exercise are common for new parents. In the second sentence, the phrase such as going to the grocery store and finding time to exercise is essential to the overall meaning of the sentence. Therefore, a comma is not needed. For more resources on this and other grammar-related topics, visit www.grammargrounds.com.